Welcome to TFiR Let's Talk. I am your host, Swapnil Bharti, and my next guest is Ishan Mukherjee, Pixie co-founder. Ishan, first of all, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
There are a lot of things to talk about today, but I would love to start with Pixie itself. You are one of the co-founders, so tell me about Pixie. What problem that you saw in the space that you're trying to solve that you created Pixie?
Absolutely. So we started Pixie in the observability space, and we focused primarily on cloud native applications deployed on Kubernetes. And the core problem that we're looking to solve is we spend far too much time instrumenting our applications, our infrastructure to collect metrics, traces, logs, the data that you need to both observe, monitor, and improve your software. So Pixie was started in 2018 by Zen, Oscar, and myself to essentially give developers and operators all the data that they need without doing any instrumentation. So it is a no instrumentation observability system for Kubernetes.
Excellent. And Pixie was acquired by New Relic last year, and now it's being open sourced, and it's being contributed to CNCF. Talk about why you are open sourcing it, because when you do open source any project and you give it to a neutral foundation, you lose control over the project because then the governance, the community take over the control. But at the same time, you also gain confidence and trust because people don't look at, hey, it's a company owned product, we don't want to touch it. You also gain a lot of contributors. So talk about the whole strategy behind open sourcing it.
Our story is somewhat unique. We started the company with a pure kind of product mindset. So both of us are product operators. We worked at large and small companies, just building, kind of really focusing on building amazing kind of product experiences. When you're doing that independently, you have to make a choice. Are you building out as an open source company or as a SaaS company? Because we effectively had a cold start. We just focused on the product, and SaaS made the most sense to kind of sustain ourselves as an independent entity. When we joined forces with New Relic, there was really convergence of goals. We wanted to drive Pixie's ubiquity. Our kind of North Star is to enable a world where all developers can use Pixie. And really, like, hopefully for us as engineers, it gets to a point of ubiquity like Prometheus or Kubernetes itself. And with New Relic, they have a really interesting strategy where they're open sourcing all of their software which lives inside the customer's environment. So they're standardizing on OpenTelemetry as their data ingest layer. And they've open sourced 10 years of R&D in agents and collectors, and Pixie kind of slots in there, right? So when we merged forces, it gave us an amazing platform to accelerate this growth of ubiquity. And then with New Relic, it can align with their strategy to essentially standardize on OpenTelemetry. So looking forward, why the CNCF and why a neutral ground? Like, our kind of goal is to we're in the process of contributing to the CNCF. As it gets there, could we essentially kind of accelerate the number of kind of developers and engineering teams who use Pixie? If that happens, the project kind of lives on, and that's kind of technical feat. It is an exciting goal. And for New Relic specifically, like, they both give back to the community and present this really unique opportunity. Like, if you want to build your own stack around Pixie, go for it. If you want to focus on your business and want to work with this kind of highly kind of managed SaaS platform, New Relic is kind of the right choice, right? So it is a very unique kind of story and a playbook that has rarely been seen before in kind of enterprise software, but through a bunch of reasons, it kind of all worked out, and we're excited about the path to the future. In terms of control in the community, as you know, this is how modern software is built. We build in the open source, we build with the community at the core, and kind of being part of the CNCF helps us kind of engage with thought leaders, every leading project, but also like a massive end user community and all of the clouds, right? So you saw AWS was a big part of the announcement because now we can actually kind of, from an engineering standpoint, work everybody on this neutral ground in a collaborative manner versus a competitive dynamic.
How is Pixie integrated with New Relic?
The way we've integrated is, again, kind of pre-aligned with the strategy and has been kind of consistent with the story that we've shared in the community. So Pixie inside New Relic continues to essentially kind of exist and continue to grow as an kind of a very well-contained kind of engineering team. So Zen is the general manager for Pixie and kind of New Relic open source. The core engineering team is kind of continues to be here, and actually we're expanding. So the idea is for Pixie to continue to kind of build out as a purely open source project. So it is a kind of validation of this really bold and ambitious strategy that Bill Staples, who's the president and now the CEO of New Relic, is charting, where open source is core to New Relic's kind of growth strategy. So we, for us, is essentially a new home. It's a new platform. Kind of, we were a SaaS and an independent company. Now we continue to build that out. We're actually accelerating growth as part of a larger entity. And then, just to be candid, this was part of the conversation we had. We were very passionate about Pixie, as the metrics show, our growth was really phenomenal, and we did not have plans to kind of go down this path, but because of this opportunity, it all kind of worked out. So this was all within the plan, and Bill and the New Relic executive teams have been amazing sponsors, and they're following through. We're only increasing our investment.
Open source solves day one problem. It's, day two is where the real challenge happen. And commercialization is critical to survival of open source. Without commercialization, as much as some people may not like the word, but it's essential. And Linux Foundation and all those, they're doing a great job to create a booming ecosystem around where vendors can play a big role there. So that was the focus, that how you are putting it in hands of users. So those who do not have either in-house technical expertise or they don't want to, they can easily go and use it.
Absolutely. I think with Pixie, there is definitely that vector, right? So you can deploy Pixie very easily. I can build out a self-managed version. And then there are the day 2 and day 3 challenges of actually sustaining that. The other thing that is unique to Pixie is that think of Pixie as this kind of very sophisticated agent which runs inside your substrate, where it is just harvesting data, processing it, and relaying it over, right? So from a commercialization standpoint, there's one kind of avenue where there's an enterprise grade version of Pixie that vendors, cloud vendors, or New Relic specifically could offer. The other is kind of these observability platforms, New Relic Wing Bun, kind of really presenting a first-class experience for this kind of data harvesting source. So there's these two kind of vectors in which kind of commercialization may occur. As you probably saw in the Future Stack announcement, we're starting with the second one. We've open source Pixie. It's now increasingly becoming ubiquitous. And New Relic is presenting this really exciting journey where the Pixie data is getting kind of ingested into New Relic One as a platform. And there are these very opinionated UIs, which hopefully are to a point where kind of engineering teams would say like, wow, this is not something I want to dedicate like tens of engineers building in-house, but this is where like a real SaaS platform shines, and I want to really engage with New Relic One, right? So there's two kind of parts. The first part, the enterprise grade kind of on-prem deploys, is something that we get a lot of interest in, and that is also part of the roadmap.
Right. Since you already mentioned Future Stack, the event is underway. Tell me, you already touched upon it, but what are the major, announcement that you made? And then we will also, I want to go deeper into observability space, but let's talk about Future Stack.
Absolutely. So the core idea for Future Stack has always been like a technical conference for engineers to kind of peer into the future of how they should run and observe their software systems. Not to kind of meander too much, New Relic was one of these original dev tool companies, right? Like late 2018, they lit up Ruby applications, and then the cloud happened. They're like building for developers, and that story has been core to the company from the very origin. Again, Lou started the APM industry with Wiley like way back. So this year, what you saw with this idea of not just kind of product innovation, but also customer stories and ecosystem stories around this mission for observability for all. Like the core idea is, how can we make observability a data-driven approach to engineering, a daily practice for all engineers across their life cycle? So in that kind of framing, that is kind of our core mission, kind of how can we make kind of all phases of engineering kind of data-driven? So from a product standpoint, we announced kind of Pixie's integration to New Relic One. So now any New Relic One customer, any developer can essentially get observability out of the box in this literally kind of a few minutes with Pixie. Second thing that we announced is Again, a very similar playbook. You can build custom dashboards and visuals leveraging open source libraries. Third, we announced this network observability as kind of a new persona that we're kind of, again, serving observability for network engineers, harvesting data through a partnership. So those three are kind of product. From an ecosystem standpoint, Yana Dogan from AWS, who's one of the primary observability engineers, she kind of talks about how Pixie is a part of their open source kind of observability roadmap. We have the product lead from Azure talking about Pixie and Relic, and Kelsey did this amazing demo, which in Kelsey's way has a GitHub repo with many stars, which talks about this core idea of like really harvesting data and now using that to drive these data-driven workflows, whether that's to monitor Vault or run your load balancer. So that's kind of the ecosystem story that came through. And then from a customer standpoint, we announced a set of new programs, one for startups, second for nonprofits, third for specifically students. Again, the core idea is how do we democratize access to observability and kind of really can accelerate that journey that New Relic is leading.
Now, I would like to talk about observability. First of all, from your perspective, what is the role of observability in today's cloud native stack? Because it's complicated, complex, and if you don't have a visibility into what's going in your stack, you have no clue. Once again, that's the first phase. Second phase of the question is that does observability only point you in a direction, hey, something is happening there, but now you have to go and debug it. So talk about observability from this holistic approach, its role in, because it doesn't matter whether we call it observability, whether we call it understandability. The whole goal is something is happening, I need to know it and I need to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question is the role of observability, and the second is like, is it kind of pointing or is it more holistic than that? So yeah, let me cover those. To take a step back and just to recognize observability is this new higher order kind of concept, which like the cloud or edge is in the early stages of being like a concrete noun that everybody understands, right? And I fully understand that. The folk New Relic understands that, the industry understands that, which means like leading engineering teams and kind of companies like New Relic have this responsibility to make it more concrete. So from the first part, what is the role of observability for us from personal perspective, from Pixie perspective, from New Relic perspective? What we're passionate about is this idea that the role of observability is to make the entire engineering lifecycle more data driven. And what that means is obviously in production, which is the wheelhouse kind of use case, right? I have kind of production applications. Something's gone wrong. I'm with my partner at dinner and there's an outage. I need the data to debug that. That is definitely the case. But we believe like the vision for observability is kind of larger than that. What if you use data from production to build a performance profile and you use that in your test and CI/CD pipeline? It's really tight data-driven loops. What if you took kind of data from production and really understood kind of how many new features are we shipping, and so that I can plan better? So our core idea is these tight data loops where engineers can do better planning, deployment, build, and operate with data is kind of the role for observability. So the way it's kind of panning out right now is as a practice, right? So in certain engineering teams, kind of platform and infrastructure engineers are kind of rolling that out. In certain areas, you have one or two kind of software engineers taking a lead, right? So the vision, data-driven engineering across the life cycle. And that's a good kind of segue to your second question, which is kind of, is observability kind of me pointing to an outage and me debugging that? Is it more than that? We definitely think it's more than that. We feel it's actually not a feeling. We're already seeing that kind of from a rapid adoption across like our customer base, where the data for observability is being used in pre-production environments. So to make it very concrete, like CI/CD is by far the fastest growing kind of segment of the dev lifecycle where data is getting used a lot more, both from kind of monitoring my kind of canary green blue deploys, but also actually doing kind of pre-prod testing. So that's one. The other is more in the planning phase where people are measuring kind of dev velocity based on an observability data, right? So we think like data can fuel the entire life cycle, and we think it'll make engineering teams a lot more proactive than reactive to kind of production troubleshooting.
Ishan, if you look last year, because of this pandemic, a lot of companies, they kind of accelerated their digital transformation, cloud native journey. Now that hangover is kind of over. Now people are settling down. Now they are dealing with real, because last time was just a rush, last year, this time. So from observability perspective, what kind of either patterns that you are seeing, or what kind of trends that you are seeing, that as people are running these applications and they are looking at the problems that are coming in, so is it kind of leading to adoption of observability, or you think they're getting stuck? Hey, what do we do now?
That's a really great question. I think what we're seeing the most, which is kind of across the board, is teams kind of decompressing, kind of moving away from this pressure cooker environment that we're in, and really thinking about the year ahead. And then in that, they're really asking us, having these technical conversations about how can we use observability as a practice across my life cycle. So if as you saw in Future Stack, kind of leading kind of companies like Credit Karma and Worldfield Services, their use cases are way beyond prod and pre-prod environments. So this higher order kind of potential of observability is starting to pan out as kind of teams come back, decompress, and think of the year ahead. Last year we're in a tough situation. How do we make most of it? There were industries like streaming and gaming where it was only growing and booming, and they were in this situation. How do we keep the systems running? So there was this pressure cooker environment. But what we're seeing now is really exciting conversations about not just acceleration, but an expansion of the promise of observability.
Ishan, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about not only the open sourcing of Pixie at CNCF, how you're integrating it with New Relic, how you're bringing it to users, commercial angle of open source, and also the wider observability space. So thanks for your time today. And I just said I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Sapno.